Guys, I don't even know what day it is. We've been lost on this teacher's island for so long. You know, I've got the professor and Skipper and Gilligan with me, and we're on this island of Teacher Island with nowhere to go. I think it's yeah, that's right. It's day 19. Good morning, guys. How are you doing today? Today is May 12th, 2020. Day 19. We're getting so close to the summer. We've only got this week, and then Tuesday, Wednesday of next week, and then that's right. You guys will be moving on upstairs to 3rd grade. Today is Talking Tuesday. Talk to somebody. Wish them well. See how they're doing. Especially somebody at home. I hope you guys are doing well. With that being said, let's get started with our learning today. Have a great day. Good morning and welcome to today's show. Abe's Announcements is the title of our show today because we have a special guest. Yes, he is former President Abraham Lincoln. We will ask him a few questions, but we have to return from commercials. Today's show is brought to you by Number Crunches, Basements Unlimited, and Mrs. Elliott's Laundry Shop. We'll come back with Abe Lincoln in just a moment. Well, welcome back to our talk show, Abe's Announcements. Well, like I said before, thank you, Abe Lincoln, for coming today.
Well, thank you, Mr. Elliott, for having me here. I'm glad to come on to the Honest Abe Announcement Show and be able to talk about these questions you have for me. Thank you again. Before we get started, I heard that you guys took a little trip to my boyhood national park and got to see where Abraham Lincoln grew up. I hope you guys enjoyed the frontier and the areas where I lived as a young boy.
Now, President Lincoln, I would like to ask you a few questions, if you don't mind. My first question, what would be your biggest accomplishment throughout your life?
Well, my biggest accomplishment, I've done a lot in my life. I was a lawyer. I did different things, different jobs, became the president. But my biggest accomplishment, I would have to say, is living during the time where I was able to end slavery. I think that would be my biggest accomplishment.
Next, many people say you're one of the best presidents to ever become a president. How do you feel about that?
How do I feel about being told that I'm one of the best presidents? I just want to say thank you. If you believe that, then thank you. I just did what the presidents before me did and just tried to do the best of my ability.
My final question is, what would you give advice? What kind of advice would you give to viewers today?
As for advice, my advice is don't ever forget where you come from and what made you into the person you are today. Yes, it's right. I may have been born in Kentucky, raised in Indiana, moved to Illinois, and became the president. But don't forget that I never forgot who I was and where I came from. So, as you grow up, don't forget your roots. Thank you for having me. It's been my pleasure.
That's it for President Lincoln. Thank you for showing up, giving your answers. Until next time with Abe's Announcements, we'll see you later. Our homework today is going to be reading. You've got reading questions on Google Forms. You have Raz Kids, one nonfiction book, and you have the poem, My Puppy Likes the Water. In writing, you're going to do your journal entry, and then you're going to write one poem, really working on your craft, the way you want to write. In math, you've got fraction problems found on Google Forms. You will have to use the video to answer the questions. So it's going to be going back and forth. Those questions are going to be multiple choice. And then you're going to go on iReady Math. Activity and challenge, you got a National Geographic Kids video that you're going to watch that talks about 8 animals that are unique found around the world. And then you're going to finish up with a shake break. This week we're going to continue to look at historical figures and events that have happened throughout this world and society that we live in, and how people have changed and shaped how we live today. Today I am going to read about a person named Luther Jenkins. Listen carefully because I'm going to be asking you some questions. He is a person that worked at NASA, and NASA obviously has a very important role in our space exploration and the way that we are able to get to space. So Luther Jenkins has a unique job, and I'm going to read about that in just a second. Now tomorrow we're actually going to shift our learning over to our social studies book and continue to learn about historical figures, but it's going to come out of our social studies book. Today's biography comes out of our science book. Meet Luther Jenkins. Luther Jenkins works at NASA. He is an aerospace engineer. Need to know that. He studies airplanes. Math and science were Luther's favorite subjects in school. At first, Luther wanted to become a lawyer. He soon discovered that he liked to learn how things work. He decided to become an engineer. At NASA, Luther uses math and science in his work. He uses wind tunnels to conduct experiments on airplanes. He works with special lasers to measure the speed of air. Now, I know, just like many of you are going to say, when I get out of school, why do I need to worry about math? I'm not going to use math. Here is a prime example of a person who, even though he has graduated, has carried over math into his job. It says, he soon discovered that he liked to learn how things work. He uses math and science in his work. Now, think about how important his job is. He works on and studies airplanes. It says that he has to conduct experiments on an airplane. If he didn't conduct these experiments and he just worked and said, my work's done, I'm not going to experiment, and sends out an airplane without testing it, think about what could happen. So, his job is very important because he is able to work, use math, use science, and then have those experiments. So, maybe you haven't heard of him. He might not be the most important figure or historical figure, but his job and the role that he plays today in today's society has shifted where we have come from beginning stages of airplanes to where we are today in jets and in a spaceship that is able to travel to the moon. So, I have read this story on Luther Jenkins, this biography. You're going to have a few questions on Google Forms, and then you're going to have another nonfiction story on Raz Kids. Today is Tuesday, but Tuesday's our new Monday, so it is poem time. Today's poem is brought to you by my laptop, where I'll be able to upload it onto our website and put it into our Google Slide presentation. Our poem is My Puppy Loves the Water. Here we go. My puppy likes the water, my puppy likes to swim. I've never seen a puppy who swims as much as him. He swims not on the surface, but only underneath. And maybe I should warn you, he has very scary teeth. Whenever people see him, they're frightened of his grin. Or maybe it's his lack of fur. Or maybe it's his fin. If you should buy a puppy, just get the kind that barks. Don't be like me. I bought mine at a store that just sells sharks. Man, how would you like to have a puppy that can swim, that has sharp teeth, that has a fin? Oh wait, it's a shark. No, I'm going to upload this, My Puppy Likes the Water, into our Google Slide presentation, as well as put it on my website. That way you can access it. So you got a poem to read tonight. Reading homework tonight. You have reading questions found on Google Forms. You only have one story that you have to listen to and answer questions on Raz Kids, nonfiction story. And you're going to finish off by reading our poem, My Puppy Likes the Water. That'll take care of reading. As we start another week in writing, we're going to continue to work on poetry, really trying to work on our craft. And as you can see behind me on my board, I've written, today's poetry, we need to focus on our language. Who is your audience? Do you want to use a higher level use of word choice and language, or do you want to bring it down to where we are able to understand? So my first bullet is language. My second bullet is the author's craft. Now, we said, I think it was Thursday, that you want to borrow different techniques and write like the person that you like to read's poems. So you're gonna use your craft and the techniques that you borrowed to write in your own way. And then your last one is obviously your word choice. We've talked about using repetition. We've talked about those sound words, automatopoeias. And I really want today's poem just to focus on really working on your craft and how you write your poem. I've got a poem that I'm going to share, and then after I share this poem, then I'm going to leave it to you guys to write. So not a whole lot in writing as far as listening to me. It's going to be about you working on your craft and the way that you present your poems. Today's poem is titled Apple Shadows. Out in the orchard, what do I see? Apples and their shadows, high on every tree. Apples and their shadows floating in the air. Fat round apple shadows dangling everywhere. I pick an apple from the tree. I eat it, crunch by crunch. My apple and its shadow, I have them both for lunch. Now, this particular poem, the first stanza is 2 lines. The second stanza is 3 lines. The third stanza is 4 lines. The fourth stanza is 4 lines. And the fifth stanza is 3 lines. Let's go back to stanza 2. Apples and their shadows high on every tree. Okay, they're trying to paint that picture, create that visualization for you. One word that is repeated quite frequently is the word apples. It's in the title, and then it is in stanza 2, stanza 3, stanza 4, and stanza 5. Let's look at stanza 3. Apples and their shadows floating in the air. Fat round apple shadows dangling everywhere. Okay, so in this particular stanza, line 1 and line 3 each have the word shadows. But in line 2 and 4, they got air and everywhere. So they rhyme. Let's look at the next stanza before we finish up. I pick an apple from the tree. I eat it, crunch by crunch. In that last line of that stanza, they're using sound words, automatopoeias. Crunch, crunch. They're trying to help you create that sound to strengthen that visualization that's in your mind. This particular poem, I chose it because it touches a little bit on repetition, it touches a little bit on word choice, it touches a little bit on, like I said, automatopoeia, sound words. This poem is something that you can listen to, and it can help you figure out what is your craft going to be. What's the technique that you're going to write, that you like to write your poems? So play around with the way you write your poems, whether you're going to put it in a list, whether you're going to write it more as a casual conversation, and then send that to me on a Google Docs. Apple shadows. An apple sounds really good right now, guys. In your writing today, you're going to do your journal entry. Just keep that going, guys. I know that you might get tired of writing every day about what you're doing or how e-learning's going, but it's just to practice, to continue to write, to work on that writing, those writing muscles, and to get thoughts on paper. And then today's poem, it is working on your writing craft, your style that you want to write and display as a poet.